Hi, welcome to Office Hours, a podcast about what leadership actually looks like in real life, not in theory, not in titles, and not in perfect conditions. I am Carolina.
And I'm Lisa. And today we're going to talk about why you keep postponing what matters most. And honestly, Carolina, it's amazing to me how people really sabotage themselves so often by not doing what they really want to do.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that before. I do help many entrepreneurs start their business, or some of them are just having like gigs and side hustles and so on. And when they start at the very beginning, it's very interesting to see how they start with a lot of like intention and suddenly something comes up and you see them like just backpedaling a little bit and in a way self sabotaging themselves. I do believe that is connected to you do want to grab what you know and uncertainty concerns you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think the uncertainty in any moment, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you've been doing something for a while, conditions are changing all the time in the business world. Just doing any kind of change right now is really hard for a lot of people because you just don't know what it's going to look like once you stop doing one thing or once you start doing something different. There's a lot of fear around it.
It's very true. And there's another thing that that time is not on your side sometimes because you don't know you're sabotaging yourself. You kind of learn little by little. When I talk to those that I do consultations with, many times I let them kind of speak on their own terms for a couple of meetings or like the first meeting. And then at the end, I'm like, have you seen that maybe you're attaching yourself towards a specific item or topic that you're very good at and you don't want to let it go. Some of them are very good planners. Some of them want to organize everything and have it ready. Some of them are connected to controlling everything. Or sometimes they just do very good sales, but they just don't plan before that. So they just literally do anything or everything that they can not to have to do what they have to move ahead, but you can't see it, and that happens to every one of us, which is like try and do what we're best at and keep on doing it until we understand that we actually have to go into other territories and learn about it, so then you can move on. But it's
Yeah,
difficult to get to that point, I think.
100%. It is so hard to get out of your comfort zone, right? And I think that business and entrepreneurship for sure you have to stretch way outside your comfort zone. And there's all this fear. It can look really busy. You can do the planning part, as you said, if you're really good at planning or making sure everything is going to be perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect, right? This is what the world is. The world is a little messy, but growth happens when you just try. And so maybe we should talk a little bit about like sort of trying in ways that feel safe enough to make that leap, right? What are some of the things you think people need to do to be able to really stretch out of that comfort zone?
I think that the main thing would be analyze a little bit the pattern, because I think that when you start seeing that you're not moving ahead or that the same issues keep on coming back, that's a red flag. So
Yeah.
that tells you that maybe you're grabbing yourself into what you know and you're not moving ahead. So I think that the first step would be try and be a bit more on the balcony. I remember that I read a book not long ago that was about leadership. And one of the things was just like look at some instances as if you were from a balcony and checking it from a different perspective. And then when you do that, in a way, you're able to analyze what is happening and what keeps on repeating itself. So then you at least are conscious about it. So the first thing will be that just make sure that you understand exactly what it is that you're doing that is sabotaging yourself, and just be actively listening to yourself.
Yeah, listening to yourself. That's exactly right. That self-awareness, right? Remember in those old cartoons, there would be like a little devil on your shoulder and then the little angel on your shoulder, right? And that is that self-awareness, really that sense of being yourself on your shoulder and saying, "Hey, have a conversation with yourself and really take time. This is work." And people think, "I don't have time to do it." Well, you need to schedule, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to really think about What is getting me stuck here? And why am I not moving forward? And really, that time of just reflecting with yourself is so, so important and getting some awareness about how you come off. So, here's another question. And I find this is really helpful to people who really are having a hard time moving forward. First of all, I ask, what is the worst thing that could happen? Right?
That's
Sometimes
true.
people don't start making sales calls, they don't start doing this. What is the worst thing that can happen? Someone might say no.
True.
Okay, there's rejection and that can hurt. I get it. Right? But if you're going to do something new, you got to find the way that works. And sometimes there really are bad things that can happen, and maybe that should be a blocker, right? But just think about what is the worst thing that could happen? And then think about what is the best thing that could happen, right? What if someone says yes?
It's very true, and we generally start with the worst. We never think it's gonna work, right?
Right.
As leaders, many leaders do think about quite hard into what would people think about me if I do this? Because
Hmm.
you're leading someone and you've got that role. But one of the things that I've learned through the years why I lead my team is the ability to be able to be wrong. And it is better to try than not try and always be right. Because you don't want to keep on doing the things that you're good at just for you to be able to be right all the time. Because most likely you got really good at them. So now you've got them covered. But you really want to tackle those things that you do not know about and that you want to start trying. And if you don't start trying, then how are you going to know if it's going to work? And
Right.
one of the things that we learn in design is basically understanding that everything is a process and that everything is new and you have to give yourself an opportunity to be wrong and to say okay this is not the path and then tell everyone I can also be wrong so that's fine and you can be wrong but try otherwise you're not going to give your team that psychological safety that you're looking for.
Yeah, 100%. It has to be safe to fail because I always say there is no real failure unless you give up, right?
Yeah.
If you do something and it doesn't work, you've learned something. Even if all of you've learned is that doesn't work, it forces you to try something else, right? Until you do find something that works, right? So you might try 3 or 4 times. What is that famous quote from Thomas Edison? He made 99 ways not to make a light bulb, but eventually he found just the one way to make a light bulb, and we used it for 100 years, those incandescent light bulbs. So
That is true.
sometimes it's that trial and error, and you do might have to, try a few things that don't work, but as long as you keep learning and keep trying, that's how you find real growth and real success. You just have to keep at it.
It's true. And I think that also one of the big things that you have to do is to conquer, I would say, those challenges from before, because I think that this also comes from school, not what you're learning at school that does work when you're in the school, but not once you leave school.
Yes.
Meaning, when you're there, you go and do math, let's say, and 2 plus 2 is 4. If it's not right, then you're wrong, and that's it. And in
Right.
some other items
Well,
as well
also
that
you get
maybe
penalized. In
well,
school, if you put the wrong answer on a test, they grade you down, right? They
100%.
don't they don't say, "Oh, you still need to learn that," right?
Yeah, and it makes sense when you're learning, I think. But once you're out of that environment, you really need to figure out how to go around it because you
Mhm.
cannot keep on going into that same idea of like either I'm right or wrong. There's always this path that takes you to right or wrong decisions, but you find it along the way. And as you were saying, there's nothing worse than not learning about that or maybe thinking that you always have to be right because that's also not true
Yeah.
and you are not growing if you're not trying new things either. So at the end of the day, yes, sure, when you were at school you had to be right or wrong and you had to be graded, so you have to be like going from grade to grade, but now you're not there anymore. You can leave behind that whole idea of like you're right or wrong into becoming that person that kind of pushes the limits a little bit. And a funny story, like I was at school the other day teaching the class of entrepreneurship, and I told them that I wanted them to grade themselves or like to give feedback to themselves, just to critique their projects. And I told them, I'm going to give you this post-it, the green one, for you to tell the people that are you're reviewing the good things that you have and that you can bank on, right? And then I gave them another post-it, just pink, any color, and just give them the feedback that you think they could get better at. Everybody wrote, this is not right. So here in this post-it, we write all the things that are wrong. And I'm like, no, what's with the right and wrong? It's just, this is the right and this is what you can get better at. Like this is what maybe might not be hitting the mark, but you can do this. So it's just this brain that we have that is just
Yeah.
wired into right and wrong. But I think that
Y-
as leaders, we have to start wiring differently.
Yeah, really shift from that binary right and wrong mindset. I think that is why people postpone a lot of things and don't do the things they want to do because they get stuck in that, well, if I do it, I could be wrong, and then get stuck in that kind of thinking. But what you're saying is it's a process, right? It's not about right or wrong. It's about what can you improve? What can you do better? Iterating that process of getting better and better and just start somewhere and try to improve it. It's not a right or wrong, it's a process for improvement.
And I think that at the end of the day, if you gather enough data and you do as much as you can to get things right, if you try to have a good intention first, but also if you try to gather as much data as you can for the decision you're going to make, well, you're really, as you were saying, not going to be wrong. You just might not have all the data at the time that took you to the right decision, or maybe
Right.
you thought it was going to work. Because the other thing I tell my students, like, you're never going to make a decision based on something that you want to do wrong. You're always thinking the outcome is going to be good. So
Right.
if you have that, and on top of that, you've got enough data to be able to back that up and to tell yourself, okay, look, I did myself a favor and just figured all this much beforehand, then that means that I already won. And then if something is wrong, then you know that that's not the path. And you have a way with that data to recalculate your path once again. If you do not put yourself out there, then you're going to keep on self sabotaging yourself because you won't be able to give yourself an opportunity to be different and to grow.
Yeah, yeah. And don't think it's going to be perfect. Exactly what you were saying is like maybe the data is imperfect, but looking for perfection, that's another fear that a lot of us have. We want to be perfect right out of the box. We're the first time we try something, it's not always going to be perfect. So don't let the idea of perfection stop you from trying, right? You have to just sometimes try it and see how it goes and take the first step toward it.
It is very true. And perfection, I feel that when you do something and you have it 100% right out the bat, I think that that's scary. That is very scary because that means that you don't know what worked. And the other day I was listening to someone in a podcast and talking about Instagram and those that go viral. And it says that one person went viral with a video and just once, just because. And after
Right.
that, they just didn't know what was going on. So then the next videos, they're like, what did I do that worked? Because you just had it right in the first try and
Right.
just didn't know
They
why.
had
And
that
I think they're
magic
still trying
moment
to
and then
figure
they
it out.
lost it.
So I think it's better if you're not right. 100%. So I think that you never know, but I rather have a process that tells me what's wrong than to just, I mean, hopefully you're lucky enough to have it right in the first place, but
I think the
you will
other
be
thing that
luckier
people
if you know
forget when they
why
are
it was right.
postponing the things that really matter to them and they're doing the research whatever but they're not actually taking the steps. And you alluded to this earlier. People forget that actually not doing something also has the cost. Not changing has a cost, whether it means that you're getting behind because other people are doing it and they're trying and they're figuring it out. They're not perfect either, but they're going forward, right? So the world is constantly changing. If you stay in the past, you're going to find yourself really out of sync with what's going on in the world. So you really do have a cost even not doing anything. So I think it's better to start trying to have a process and trying to get better to keep up with the
Oh,
world because everything is changing so fast. We really have to just give it a try and see what happens.
everything else you can reroute, figure out whatever, but time, I know people that have been trying to, get into a business for the past 2 years, and they're like, yeah, but I'm not ready. I'm like, doesn't matter. You're never gonna be ready. Just go at it. Just try. And if it doesn't work, then I don't know, just breathe, go for a coffee, come back and just figure it out.
Again, you don't wanna throw all your eggs in that basket, right? You wanna start this business, but start it small, start it on a shoestring. Just take the first steps and see what you get, right? See how far you can take it. So I do think you're right that, people we can wait for years or 2 years. I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
people take 2
Times
years
they
to make a
wanted
hiring decision. Well, they've lost 2 years of productivity because of that hiring decision. All of these things do there is a moment when it's better to make an imperfect decision now than to try to find a perfect decision a year or 2 years down the
we
line.
just what's important is the process and what you learn along the lines, and what you give also your team an opportunity to also bring their own ideas into that. Like, you're not alone in the world. You are a leader because you've got a team behind you. That's the whole point. So I think that if you give yourself
Right,
that opportunity to grow, you're giving your team an opportunity to help you grow
right.
and grow with you, which is also important. And for them to see your imperfection, let them see their imperfection and let them understand that that gives everyone an opportunity to grow because of that.
Yeah, permission to fail. Alright, so if we're gonna wrap this up, what is the one
Um,
leadership, lesson you'd like people to take away today
I
on this question of why do you keep postponing what matters most?
see the patterns like without the face mask. That'll be one. And
Okay.
second, just have the courage. People are afraid to do things that are new. Nobody that I know is not afraid to do something new. So just with being afraid, just try it. It's worth it. It's always worth it.
Okay, so build your self-awareness, check in with yourself, make sure you're okay, and then take the first step, right? Don't let your fear hold you back. I love that. I would say, ask your 2 questions. Ask, what is the worst that could happen? And what is the best that could happen? And maybe ask the third question, what is the most likely thing that would happen? And then just give it a shot. I think somewhere between the worst and the best, you're going to find yourself somewhere in the middle and it's going to be okay. So don't let those fears hold you back. So thank you, Carolina. Thank you for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it and digging into some of these tougher questions. And I think we're done for today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lisa. It was really nice to go deeper into that conversation. It's a very important one. So, thank you so much, guys, for being here. And if you have a case that is keeping you up at night, send us an email to leadershipu25@gmail.com, and we will talk about it in the future episode. Follow us on Instagram or subscribe to YouTube, and see you in the next episode.
See you next time.